Good morning and a warm welcome to everyone joining us today for a webinar on My CPE. I'm Monica, your host for today's session, connecting with you from Houston, Texas. Before we begin, I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. As we get started with the session, please ensure your audio and video are working properly. You should be able to see the screen and hear me clearly. In case you experience any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat or Q&A panel or reach out to us at support@my-cpe.com. We're thrilled to have attendees from all over the world, so I invite you to introduce yourself and let us know where you're joining us from. Whether it's a city, state, or a country, you're most welcome to my CP webinars. Fantastic. I see many responses from my attendees, and I thank everyone for joining us today and supporting our One Credit, One Meal social initiative, through which we donate one meal to an unserved for every credit earned. By participating in this webinar, you're making your continuing education more meaningful, and we appreciate your commitment to this cause. Please note that, as per regulations, you're required to remain logged into the session till the end and answer all the polling questions. An evaluation form will be sent to you within the next 24 hours after the completion of this webinar, provided you have answered all the polling questions. This is going to be an interactive webinar, everyone, and we encourage you to ask any questions you have in the Q&A panel or the chat panel. We'll do our best to address them as we go or towards the end of the session if the time permits. If not, rest assured, you will receive the response via an email within the next 24 to 48 hours. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and without any further ado, let's get started with the presenter, Philip Hofton. Phil is a seasoned expert with over 20 years of experience driving business transformation and change management across various industries. As Nakisa's Director of Business Development and Strategy, Phil collaborates with product developers and customer success managers, leveraging his expertise to support organizations worldwide in reaching new levels of performance. So, Phil, thank you for being with us today. And without any further ado, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Monica. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on investing in your professional development. I hope to be able to add to that in terms of knowledge around Agile teams. It's an honor to be here, and I look forward to the sessions and your questions throughout. What we're going to do is I can't see the chat, so if questions accumulate, our moderator, Monica, is going to interrupt me and we'll address them as we go so that we're not caught short of time at the end to answer questions and miss anything that might have been commented on during the presentation. So as Monica said, yes, that's right. I've been working with organizations as a management consultant and at Nakisa for over 20 years. When I go to bed at night, this might be weird, but I think about org charts. I think about how talent is distributed in organizations. I think about missed opportunities and how organizations are structured with the clients that I get to work with every day. And so that's my life, that's my passion. And I'm so enthusiastic about the future of how organizations get structured in an agile world for the benefit of all stakeholders, the employees themselves, the people who have a stake in the company, who operate the company, whatever that company may be, as well as the clients of those organizations and customers who have a stake in getting products and services delivered efficiently and with the best talent in the best place at the best time. So that's what this is about. So thank you for your interest in this subject. So three learning objectives for us today: analyze principles of organization design and workforce planning and their application in agile team structure, which is a bit of a departure from what many of us are used to in terms of traditional structures. Acquire practical tools and strategies you can implement immediately in your organization. So there'll be a bit of a tips and tricks on how to organize in an agile way coming up a little bit later. And then some quick techniques for harnessing the full potential of people data to enhance the value of agile processes. So we live in a data-rich world. I don't have to tell any of you that. This is true for people data as well, or HR data, as it's sometimes called. Often we think of financial data or operational data or technical data. The richness of what you're about to see really resides in people or HR data, which traditionally sits in the HR systems that you're used to working with. So without further ado, a bit of a definition. What are agile organizations? Why are they important? How do you design around agile structure? A quick case study on kind of the pioneers of this model, which is a company that's in our backyard, by the way. I sit in Montreal, Canada. Shopify is based in Ottawa, Canada, nearby, but they're really the pioneers of the agile structure. A little bit about us at Nakisa, and then I think you're going to be thrown into a quiz. And so good luck with that, and I'm sure you'll all be successful. There's nothing in this presentation that is not in the quiz, so good luck. So what's the problem? So the challenge is organizations are applying the agile organization concept are having a hard time tracking, reporting on, and managing agile teams in alignment with predetermined business objectives. So I'll take an example from my own life. I come from a professional services background in management consulting, but if I were a lawyer or if I were an accountant, the situation would be similar. We have worked in professional services on agile teams our entire careers, and maybe there's some of you who come from this world as well. What that means is we have our day jobs where we report to a person, but then we go and work on all kinds of files, mandates, projects, whatever the case may be. And we've never really had a good way of tracking those assignments and the value that's contributed by each of us into things that are maybe not core to our day-to-day. Some of that is core. That's what we do as consultants, accountants. We work on files for clients. But there's other things that we do, and there are other places that we put our time that are not properly tracked. Those other things, let's call them a project for argument's sake, have predetermined business outcomes, meaning what are we hoping to achieve as a company from having Phil or Mashid or Monica work on these projects? How much time do we think that's going to take? When is it supposed to be finished? Are we getting value from those kind of temporary assignments, if you will, or those agile assignments? Is it being run in a way that is a little bit different from the way we've traditionally done project management, which is a waterfall kind of method? If you take the analogy, which is first we start design, then we start, are people actually iterating on concepts quickly and delivering value in an agile way? So all of us in our professional lives have these assignments. Companies are very bad at tracking what that looks like and optimizing that talent assignment. Because if we're not being efficient in those assignments, we could be doing other things, maybe in our day jobs or maybe in other ways or on other projects that have more value. The other thing I'll add just on this challenge piece is employee experience is important. So most of us come to work every day to be challenged, to be stimulated, and sometimes we get stuck on stuff that is not maximizing the value that we can bring, and therefore we start looking for other things we could be doing that would stimulate us even more. And so these agile team assignments are important for the employee experience as well. retaining people, stimulating them. And as leaders, we have to always be vigilant as to who's doing what and how that is contributing to the company, but also how that is enriching the employee experience. So I don't want to forget that, being a bit of an HR guy myself. The employee experience is super critical here. Polling, I think we're at polling question number 1. The question is, has your organization started to transform from traditional org model to a more agile structure? Org structures will coexist with traditional structures for the time being. It's not one or the other. It's not binary. We have to have traditional reporting relationships for legal reasons, for employment law compliance, but we have to have an agile structure that coexists to recognize the things we were just talking about 2 seconds ago. So interesting to see that yes, no is shared. So thank you very much for your feedback so far. So if I'm going through to this next slide, are you guys seeing it, Monica?
Yes.
What are agile organizations? Okay. So here's our definition. So you probably heard the term agile in the context of ITIL or other IT project management standards, where there's scrum leaders, there's sprints. We think of it more to reflect the parallel of the traditional organization, which is organized a bit like a machine. So if you go to the right of the slide here, it's a top-down hierarchy. We all have bosses. We all report to someone. There's a bunch of stuff happening kind of in the middle management to continue the business continuity, to run, to do things. Here it's indicated as bureaucracy. I find that a little bit doing a disservice to what people in those roles do, but there's a lot of stuff you have to do to make the business run. And that's just the reality of a traditional hierarchy. We have detailed instruction, so some groups that just, hey, go program this, go develop this kind of product, Mr. or Mrs. Design Engineer in a manufacturing company. We have silos. I work for finance, and that's it. I do finance, and then and so on and so on. So the way traditional organizations are set up kind of promotes this siloed and hierarchical view of an organization. Where it's leading to, and this is a hard thing to track, and this is kind of the business challenge we alluded to a little bit earlier, is more of an organism. So from machine to organism. So as opposed to being a factory of products and services, we're now an ecosystem of collaboration where people interact with other people who don't look like them from a traditional structure point of view, but they have a vested interest in a common business outcome, which could be a project or a mandate or a file, et cetera, et cetera. So the good news about this kind of more organic view of an organization is that it's more agile. So, people move from one project to another, and I put 10% of my time here and 20% of my time here on Monday, and then on Tuesday it's flipped. So it becomes, a bit more of a dynamic employee experience to be able to contribute to these sub-organisms, if you will, organizationally speaking. The tough part is, when it comes to explain what an employee does, and they look at their job description, and then they look at what they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, it can be very different. And so tracking accountability, tracking performance of the employees, tracking employee engagement can be a little bit hard as we all navigate this more organic structure. Nevertheless, the point of all this is to get to a little bit more kind of optimized collaboration. So the kind of instruction on agile teams. So what we started saying was that it's a much more organic. This is a real thing, I guess, I would say. And it also aligns to what the expectations are of new workers entering the job market. I'm the father of an 18-year-old who's going to access the market in a couple of years. His expectation of what work looks like is very different than when I was that age or a little bit older and accessed the world of work. They expect more challenges, less traditional reporting relationships, more collaboration. And the other thing I would say is removing a little bit of the, what they call here, bureaucracy, but a bit of the internal admin roles and responsibilities is expected. So agile by definition means you're being quicker, you're being more flexible, you're addressing client needs a little bit more directly, less documentation, less decision-making processes to go through. So this is happening. So we have to be reflective of that in our roles as managers throughout our organizations. So it's coming. It's here. The way that I alluded to Shopify as a kind of a pioneer in this model. So this is kind of what it looks like. So a tribe, which is basically an organization. So here at Nakisa, we're the Nakisa tribe, but we might also be in the development or R&D tribe. So it's a collection of the following groups or subgroups that I'm going to talk about in just a second. The main one you might be assigned to is called a squad. So you, in your traditional structure, may report to a certain person, but you may be assigned to different squads, which could be aligned to a product or a service in your organization. And so there you are. That might be part of your day-to-day. Your reality might be to be in squads and therefore no need for an agile structure. But more often than not, we do have these additional subgroups that we're assigned to that require us to pivot a little bit on our skill set and do things. So for example, I work a lot with our HR product squad, if you will, who is innovating on the functionality of the software. That's not necessarily my core, but I have to do it for the benefit of the entire tribe. Guilds are kind of loose collectives of people who are organized around a shared interest or goal. So I love, I'm learning a lot about sales. I love sales. I've never, it's a little bit new for me. So I gravitate around people who might be assigned to different squads who are interested in business development. How does that happen? How does marketing happen? How does, how do contract negotiations happen? So that could be considered a guild, which is a loose association of people who are assigned to different product lines or service lines. A chapter is more of a kind of a personal profession or a skill set. So in this example, architecture, engineering, data, could be sales, could be something else. So those are people who are kind of connected by this profession, but are assigned to different squads in their day-to-day. So that's a little bit the terms that are used. You'll hear some others. Sometimes these almost communities of practice come together, whether it's vertical or horizontal, just to discuss and iterate a little bit on innovation and share their own experiences. And so this creates matrixed kind of professional collaboration system that, as I said earlier, was very tough to kind of measure in traditional hierarchy. So why is this important? So where we're going is, okay, so in traditional structures, we all have a salary, we're all paid, obviously, for commensurate value that we deliver in an organization. Headcount is the most expensive cost item of any organization. So part of this move to an agile structure is an optimization of talent. The other thing is we've all lived through a global pandemic. Businesses have had to shift. So number one, ensure adaptability to changing conditions and priorities. So who could have predicted how work changed during the the events and the global pandemic of 2020 and 21? That's just one example. It could be anything else. Changing commodity prices if you're in a mining or commodities-based business. Speed up time to market for delivering products incrementally. So rather than spending 2 years to iterate on a product development and then go, hey, here's the big bang, please buy it. Now it's more around we're kind of upgrading over time. Here's some small incremental changes, market, would you be interested? And the feedback then is immediate, and it's now let's organize around the market feedback so that within weeks or months we can respond to those market demands a little bit more in a more agile way. Improve collaboration and communication among teams, so it's just fun to work with different people on a daily basis on different files, stretch ourselves intellectually, commercially, professionally, personally. And so that requires a lot of communication skills. And so getting together with these squads brings us kind of excitement at work and drives people to be more productive and more engaged. Prioritize customer satisfaction through frequent feedback. So I alluded to that just now. Mitigate risks through early identification and resolutions. It's like, oh no, our software is not testing well internally, and we find that out, within 6 weeks, as opposed to a year when we do the big bang release. And so we can address those risks incrementally and in a more kind of agile, I would say responsive way with smaller bites, as opposed to the big launch. Boost employee engagement, development, and empowerment. We talked about that. So those are the benefits of the agile structures. For those of you who will be taking the quiz, hint, hint, there's probably a question on this later. Polling question number 2, Monica. What is the primary goal of adopting agile methodologies in your organization? You guys nailed it. It's all of the above. The person who said increased flexibility and adaptability, perfect. It depends where you sit, what seat you sit in your day-to-day, but that is definitely a core for the time being. I think traditional structures will continue to exist for all the legal reasons that we talked about. But now the challenge for organizations is how do you represent agile structure assignments separately? And most organizations don't have the system required to coexist between a traditional structure and an agile structure. So there's a couple of things that need to be kept in mind as we look at this coexistence of multiple structures. Represent tribes, chapters, squads as org units. So it becomes something in your org structure that is, how could I put this, formal or legally represented. So if Phil goes and works on a tribe or squad, and I put time in my timesheet to that tribe or squad, that gets properly reflected. There is a vehicle for me to put time in there, financially speaking, for the organization as well. So we're getting that true accounting of what it takes to run in an agile world. Also, I need to exist in this is the point number 2 on this particular slide. I need to exist in the hierarchical structure, and that usually sits in some kind of HRIS system. Examples could be success factors, Workday, Oracle, others, but then there's also smaller ones as well. So I need to exist in that structure so then someone can take me, the entity that is my employee record, and assign me to squads and chapters or tribes or whatever it may be. There's dotted line assignments. So now you don't have one boss, you've got maybe 12, because you've got your line hierarchy, which is a straight line kind of reporting relationship. But now I'm assigned part of my time to all these different squads, and those are dotted line relationships. And those squad leaders, if you will, have a responsibility to deliver a business outcome, and therefore they have to optimize the talent they have, and they could kick you off, they could bring other people in, they could go outside to the market to get consultants, they can do whatever they want to deliver on that business outcome, typically in the most efficient way possible. So you're living in this matrix world where you are reporting to someone who is a squad leader to deliver a specific business outcome, but you have your day job as well, and the person who's going to do your performance review is going to gather feedback from all these squad leaders as to how you did that year in this matrix kind of agile world. So chapters and guilds are more horizontal relationships. So then there's these communities of practice, right? So I'm interested in software business development. So I'm in a guild, but it could be different people across the organization who are doing all kinds of different squad work that are in this guild with me, So when do those communities get together? How do they improve each other's lives? What is their responsibility to one another in terms of advancing the cause of whatever guild that they're in? Internals and externals. So I just alluded to that. So the world of work has changed a long time ago. We buy talent, we build talent, we bought talent, we automate things. We go to lower cost kind of process and transaction kind of processing countries to take part of the work that humans have done traditionally. So how do you marry all those different kind of sources of talent and sources of service delivery in an agile world, right? So your tribe could be made up of, or your squad could be made up of, non-humans. It could be made up of humans who are not employees of the organization. It could be made up of, people who are temporarily there, or in a very specific technical role, but their contract ends in 3 months, and sink or swim, you won't have them available in your squad at that time. So it's balancing all those different types of relationships between talent and the organization itself. So here's just to reiterate a little bit on the coexistence a little bit of agile teams as well as traditional structures. So what you see on the right is a more traditional structure for a squad, what it might look like. But then you see on the left, you're taking parts of the traditional structure and assigning those humans to a particular squad, but the person still needs to exist in the traditional structure. So this is a very big challenge for organizations I personally get to work with, is how do you reconcile this traditional reporting relationship? So Phil has to report to Monica or whoever else, with the assignment to a particular squad, which could be called, in this case, infrastructure. But then I also belong to those other communities of practices, tribes, and chapters. And so do those need to be reflected in the HR system? Does the time I spend in a guild need to be reflected? These are the questions we're being asked, as companies account for, how they assign and mobilize their people around business objectives. But visually, it has to be represented in through these different ways. I won't spend too much time on this. It kind of says the same thing, but here what you see is appraiser Amy is assigned to both a hierarchical organization and an agile structure, but her employee record kind of follows her, right? It's the same data. So traditionally, these exist as objects in a traditional HR system, and now you're moving them around into different kind of assignments. How does that work? Does the salary follow? Can the squad leader see what Amy gets paid, right? That's not an HR person anymore. So there's data privacy, data sensitivity issues as we move to agile structures to kind of go, are we respecting data, roles and responsibilities around data compliance and data governance and all this kind of stuff, right? Because Amy is a human who exists with certain attributes that exist in the traditional HR system that only HR people can see. Now I'm assigning her to 6 squads, what are the rules around that, for the squad leader? What can they be seeing? Traditionally, organizations do this assignment through very tabular kind of formats. So a lot of HR data that is attributed to the different talent resources that could be assigned, whether the contractors or internal employees, exist in this tabular format. So there's a lot of pulling of data and reconciling data and assigning people and maybe creating new fields on the employee record as to what squads they might be assigned to. So this is technical stuff that we grapple with whenever we try to migrate to a more agile, dotted line, matrixed structure that traditionally has been housed in systems that we all know as well. So it's kind of reconciling this new dynamic of assignment of people and the time and the money they represent for the company into an agile world. I'll just click through this quickly. This is another one. So I apologize for the very antiquated representation of an employee timesheet. But what happens in most organizations is they go through yearly a headcount plan, forecast, like who's going to be doing what and what do they cost the organization and what are they going to be doing and what value are we getting from them? And are they kind of adhering to the priorities of a strategic plan, for example? So this is a kind of a workforce planning process that happens. And sometimes it's just so simple. It's more like we're just going to increase capacity in business unit X. Therefore, we need 10 more fills, but 5 fewer Monicas. And their salary assumptions are X, Y, Z. So this workforce planning is a budgeting exercise that happens every year. Now, when you start introducing squads and agile structures, now you have to ask yourself, well, how much of an FTE am I getting from Phil in his day job that we have planned for in our yearly forecast? So let's say Phil is going to be doing 50% of what we're paying him for, but we're also going to put him in special projects because he might be a successor for some kind of leadership role somewhere down the line. How do you account for that? And so this workforce planning part, which is also future-proofing the organization against talent risks, right? Like, we're just going to need more AI, you know? We know that. We don't know if it's a director, a vice president, or 5 kind of managers, but we need to start planning through this workforce planning, for capabilities that don't exist today or we don't have enough of today. Where do those talents exist? Where are we going to get them? How are we going to steal them from the competition? Are we going to get any consultants to kind of bridge the gap to help develop our products, for example, to have an AI component? So that whole workforce planning, strategic workforce planning and future-proofing of the organization happens on a regular basis in organizations. Marry that with people need to be assigned to projects, people need to be assigned to squads. So that's the little link there on the headcount plans and forecasts. Then the reality hits in. So what does Phil actually do on a day-to-day basis? He probably puts that in some kind of employee timesheet. Oh, I thought, Phil, you were assigned 50% to squad A. I see that you've only charged 20% of your time last week. Why? What happened? Project's delayed, customer's not ready, whatever, right? So then there's the whole exercise of marrying the reality of what people do to what was forecasted in the traditional structure plus the agile structure. And so that can be a big headache, but it also allows organizations to do kind of this retroactive accounting of, hey, you know, in the end, that project cost us twice what we thought it was. That squad cost us twice what we thought it was going to be, and we got half the value. You need the numbers to kind of follow that expense of energy, if you will, from headcount and talent. And that's a tough thing to do in the systems that we have today. So I don't want to belabor the accounting part of it, but as we move to agile structures, what we see is it's happening a little haphazardly, you know, or a little bit informally. And then if we truly accounted for where everyone is putting their time, you know, we might have some surprises as to the cost-benefit analysis of a squad or a chapter or a guild. So that's the point I wanted to reinforce here. Hint, hint, there might be a question on that in the quiz. Polling question number 3. What statement best describes your organization's level of maturity for org design and workforce planning? So org design being who sits in what box and how do we optimize talent in a traditional structure. But then workforce planning is how do we forecast where they're going to be putting their time and energy going forward. Center of excellence within HR traditionally. And then workforce planning is usually led by finance as part of the cost forecasting for the entire organization. So I'm surprised by those answers. So I was just mentioning Shopify, who are an e-commerce platform, fully cloud-enabled company who kind of pioneered a little bit this agile structure that I'm talking about with all the squads and the nomenclature that goes with it. So what results they get? They were involved in a transition from traditional hierarchical model to decentralized flexible approach. So they implemented and kind of coined the terms a little bit, squads, chapters, and guilds, where small cross-functional teams, so let's scrum together as a cross-functional team and to do a particular project, they were kind of the pioneers of this. I don't know Shopify any more than that because I'm an org design guy, but they're in our backyard here in Canada, a couple hours down the road from where I sit. So very curious to see and kind of follow up a little bit 4 or 5 years down the line when they invested in this kind of organizational transformation. They were more agile closer to customers, better responsiveness, optimize their talent from a cost perspective in a way that they hadn't done traditionally before. And so it's something to consider. And I think there's a whole methodology as to day one, what would you do if you wanted to implement an agile structure in your organization? So all this stuff is available publicly. They're very transparent about this transformation. There's tons of articles as well. So I invite you to look at their story and see how it might apply to your organization if this is of interest to you. If you're not already there or haven't. Here's just a summary of the benefits that Shopify achieved and that I hope you achieve as you engage with your HR people and your center of excellence around org design to assign people to more of an agile situation. I kind of mentioned this verbally a little bit earlier, but it has been hugely beneficial, and the train is moving, like it's happening. So the people you're hiring will expect this kind of a model and this kind of a relationship with you as an employer. So think about what that might look like and how to get the systems, the data, the decision-making kind of following up with that kind of more agile assignment process for all the talent that you get to bring into your organization and for yourselves as well, personally. I'm just going to talk about Nakisa for 2 seconds. We have two major product lines. One is the finance suite. So I have colleagues here who are experts in lease administration, and real estate contract administration. So for companies that have multiple, let's say, retail organizations or retail locations, pardon me, those are probably leased. People who have property, plant, and equipment that is leased, fleets of vehicles, that kind of thing. We have a finance product that helps manage the life of that contract for the leased asset, whatever it may be, but also comply to global accounting standards as well. The area that I'm passionate about is more on the kind of the middle part of this slide is around the HR suite. So all the tracking that I was alluding to earlier, we're moving into that area. We do representation of what the organization looks like through org charts as the simplest form, but also data analytics around people data to make decisions around how to move talent around. And then the org design part is simulating organizational changes, including some of the agile moves that our own clients want to make in a way that allows them to bring the employee record and follow the employee data in a way that kind of optimizes how work gets done. We're a Canadian company. We're based here in Montreal officially, but have lots of people in Europe and other parts of the world, and the US in particular. Our base in Europe is in Germany. And so we're very proud to serve the clients that we get to work with on a day-to-day basis. They tend to be bigger, Fortune 100 type of clients who can really make the data that comes through our systems sing and dance because the sample size is so much bigger, but also they have people who are specialized in the areas I was just alluding to, whether it's org design or lease administration. There are people who do that on a day-to-day basis, and we're very happy to work with those clients. They tend to all be global too, so it's fun to work with companies who have operations in all other parts of the world, not just in our own backyard here in Canada. On the HR suite specifically, so that pillar, three kind of sub pillars, if you will. Org Insights, which is really the org charts, the data analytics, and the reporting around people data. The org design, which is modeling organizational change. And then where we're getting into is more the workforce planning, which we talked about a little bit earlier, around what's the forecast look like for talent, the demand in our organization, and what does it look like in terms of headcount and people and levels and all that kind of stuff. So an exercise that every organization goes through on a regular basis. But what's happening in the market is a lot more bringing in capabilities as opposed to just positions and salaries. So we're excited to work with our client organizations on that part of our solution as well. That's all I had in terms of slide material, Monica. So I think we're okay to open the floor to any questions. Say thank you very much on behalf of all of us at Nakisa, and for me to be able to share a little bit about how I see organizations evolving around me and with whom I get to work. So.
All right. Thank you everyone for being a part of our webinar on My CP today. I hope you enjoyed the session and found it informative, valuable, and engaging. A big shout out to amazing presenter Phil for sharing his expertise and insights. Your contribution is truly appreciated, and we're so grateful for this fantastic session again. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Monica.
One more important thing, everyone. To obtain your credit certificate, you receive an evaluation form within the next 24 hours after the completion of this webinar, provided you have answered all the polling questions. If you have any further questions or need to view the recording, feel free to email us at support@my-cpe.com. We would also love to hear your thoughts on today's webinar, so it would be really appreciated if we could record a brief video testimonial in the evaluation form to let us know how we did. Once again, thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience. We appreciate your participation and hope you'll join us again for our future sessions. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Stay safe and stay healthy. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.